because things seem to go a little bit slower when I'm videoing and showing my screen. So hey everybody, my name is Greg. I'm a principal here at Collectiv. Excited for everybody to join. Welcome to Collectiv Academy. I'm not sure if you heard Audrey mention this. We are changing up the platform as of next month, so there are going to be some updates coming to our schedule. She can provide you with all those details as they start coming through. That said, excited to talk to you guys today about understanding the calculate function. So let's dive right in. I'll turn my camera off and we'll get started. All right, so real quick, just a little bit about Collectiv. Like I had mentioned, my name is Greg. I'm a consultant. I'm a principal consultant here at Collectiv. We are based in Chicago, Illinois. However, we have consultants located all across North America, so some in Canada and also in the US. We are a 100% virtual company, meaning as long as you have an internet connection, we can help you out. We help organizations with all things within the Microsoft data stack, and we've specialized within Power BI, Power Apps, and Power Automate, as well as the Azure services that surround it. So things that move your data, transform your data, so things like Azure Data Factory, Azure Synapse, data lakes, SQL databases, all of those services that usually accompany a Power BI project. We help organizations all the way from strategy to implementation to support. So helping with that high level, how do you actually deploy a Power BI strategy out throughout your organization? That could also include data governance, adoption, and then actually just putting it where the rubber meets the road on the implementation and then maintaining those projects as they move forward through a support plan. That being said, be happy to connect with everybody on the call. If you haven't connected with me already, please find me on LinkedIn. Always looking to connect with like-minded individuals out there, always sharing a ton of content, and always curious to see what others have out there to share as well. So looking forward to delivering to you today. Like I said, understanding the calculate function. This is I don't see this one going as long. So if you have some questions, please put it in the chat or come off mute. We're going to go through calculate, kind of get an understanding of what it is, how you can actually use it, and how it actually works in Power BI report building. So that said, let's just dive right in real quickly and kind of go from there. So, first off, calculate is a DAX function. So some of you may or may not know. Ooh, got a little bit of an echo there. Audrey, can you mute someone?
Yeah, sorry.
Cool. All right, I think we're good now. So what is DAX? So for those of you that may just be beginners with Power BI, it's just the language behind the Power BI tool. It's a set of query functions that you can query against basically your data model or your different tables that are in your Power BI report. It's used to enhance your analysis with Power BI data model. So, if you're wanting to calculate, we'll show you some examples of some different ways to use DAX with the calculate function here soon. If you want to calculate, maybe total sales for all red bikes, or if you want to calculate total sales for, a specific time period. This is basically how you do that. This is how you actually use the calculate function, and that is a DAX formula itself. So any questions along that lines, any questions on DAX, feel free to let us know. So what we're all here to learn about today is the calculate function. So it's a pretty straightforward function, but it is important to know how it actually is used. So when you're actually dealing with DAX, you have two different types of functions that you use. One is called row context, one is called filter context. Today we're going to be talking about calculate, which is a filter context, which is essentially it applies a filter to an expression that is inside to an expression that you've already created. So that said, how does it actually work? So as you can see here, here's the syntax. So if you've actually started using Power BI, the calculate function has a syntax to where you type in calculate, and we'll go through an example here in a minute. But we type in that expression that can be, a sum expression, that can be an average, it could be another calculate, you can nest another calculate function inside of here. But really, this is your expression. But the key piece is what comes after that expression, and that's the filter. So basically, you're applying a filter context to this expression. But the important thing to realize is that order of operations of the calculate function itself. So what it's going to do first is it's actually going to apply the filter to your data set first before it actually runs that expression. So for example, if I'm wanting to calculate total sales for all red bikes, I might have a filter that says, bike color equals red. So what that's going to do is that's actually going to filter my data set down first to only show, to basically a table that only has red bikes associated with it. And then it's going to run that expression, and then my aggregation can occur as far as creating that total sum sales. Any questions on that before we actually get into the examples? So again, keep in mind whenever you're using the calculate, the filter context here is important. So this is simply just an expression that we'd be creating, but it's these filters. So we're going to apply this filter, and the second filter, and then the third filter. So once those filters have been applied to your data set, then we'll go ahead and then that calculation will be actually put into play. All right. If there's no questions there, what I'd like to do is I'd like to jump in and just show you all an example of how this actually works. So let me end my slideshow. We'll pull up Power BI report. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to show you here is just basically the progression of basically some different DAX functions inside of Power BI. So what you can see here on the top, first off, is just a simple horizontal bar chart, and this is showing the average price with no filter. Okay, so basically, if we look at this, we're just going to see that we just use a simple average function, an average DAX function that says, give me the average price of my stocks at close. Okay, so what it's doing is if we still go find fact stocks close, we'll go to our data set and we'll go to our close column, and it's basically giving me the average of this column. So on average, what is that price of all of my stocks, at close? And it's going to give that average. And then if we go back to our report view, we can see that this is what it is for 2020 all the way to 2016. So pretty simple equation gives us that. This could also be a sum. It could total that, what's the total for our close, but that really wouldn't make, that really wouldn't be a logical measure. But at the same time, this could be sum or some other type of DAX function. End of the day, it gives us our average price. Now, what I'd like to show next is this visual is going to show us the average price with the Dow Jones filter applied to it. So you can see here on the right, we have another measure that we've created, and this time we're using the calculate function. And the calculate function is what we're talking about today. So if you see here, we can see what we've done is we've said, give us the calculate of the average fact stocks close. So again, the same function that we used before, but instead it's telling us to apply a filter. Our filter is saying where fact stock equals Dow 30. So let's go back to our data set and look at that.
Greg, we have somebody that's asking if you could show it a little bit closer, if you could zoom in.
I don't think I can zoom in, but I'll try to zoom in a little bit here. Yes, in a minute. Let me go back to that. One moment. So if I click on this, new computer, gotta find my magnifier. There we go. So hopefully you can see this is basically the calculation that we've created. So it's the average price filter equals calculate average fact stocks close equals to Dow 30. Okay. So then if we go back to our data set, we see the stock basically what the filter calculation is doing is this. It's saying, okay, I've created a filter to where I just want to look at Dow 30. And this is basically what it's done. It went ahead and it said, okay, filter my data set down to just Dow 30, which I'm doing here as an example, and then give me the average of my close price. So then if we go back here, that's exactly what this has done. Okay, so hopefully any questions on that, hopefully that makes sense. To whereas before, with just this average, it was looking at the whole data set. Now we've applied that filter. We're looking at Dow 30 only. So one other thing I want to mention in here, as far as best practice is concerned. So in this instance, you know, this calculate function, it's still accurate. But as far as best practice of writing your DAX equations out, you should actually reference a measure rather than writing out this DAX equation of average, fact, stocks, close. Because we've already written that measure here, what I should do as far as best practice is I should actually reference that. So I should start typing in average price with no filter. So I should do this. And there's a couple of reasons you want to do that. One is efficiency. So you're not constantly recalculating your, retyping out your DAX equations. It also maintains consistency and making sure that you don't mess up your DAX equation. Because maybe, let's say it was a more complex DAX equation rather than rather than just an average. You know, that's a real easy way. Maybe you forgot to multiply it by 1.2, or you forgot to add another filter context to this DAX equation. It leaves more room for error. Plus, this is much more efficient to just reference a measure than to type out that DAX equation. So if I go ahead and just click the check mark button, you're going to see that this still remains the same because it's still the same measure. We're just now referencing the measure that we've created beforehand instead of typing out the DAX equation. So hopefully that resonates with everybody on the call. Any questions about what we've done so far? Okay, cool. So the last, I shouldn't say the last, but the next measure I'd like to show you is basically this average price, more of an advanced filter, which is what this visual down here is using. So this calculate function is basically using two filters. So the first filter, again, is what we looked at beforehand, to where we filtered our data set down to the Dow equal to 30. But the second one of what we're doing is we're actually filtering down the data set to basically show our dates between that are basically the first 3 months. So we're basically showing the average close of our stocks for just Dow 30 and then just the first 3 months. So as you can see here, I have this other filter that basically says, show it so it's just the first greater than or equal to of month 1 and then greater than or equal to month 3. So when we do that and we calculate that out, that also shows us this value here instead. So if we would look at our data set, essentially it's analyzing this date column to just show us the first month, basically the first 3 months of that year. So it applies the Dow 30 filter, and then it goes ahead and it applies another filter, basically showing you those first 3 months, and then it runs our function against this data set. Okay, so hopefully that was fairly straightforward for everybody. That's essentially how those are essentially a couple ways how you can actually run that calculate function. The other thing I'd like to show you is on another data set.
Question
What's that?
Somebody asked, is that a rolling 3 month?
It's not a rolling 3 months. That's just showing the first 3 months. So it's just to show the first 3 months for the Dow 30. So if I look at this, let's find it back. Here we go. This is just showing months 1 through 3. To do a rolling 3, that would be a different calculation. And unfortunately, I'm not your guy to show you how to calculate a rolling 3 months. That would be something I need to investigate. So if I wanted to look at the next 3 months, I would do something along the lines of 4 to 6. As I do that, then this value here changes accordingly. You can see how our data changes. Great question, though. Let me know if there's anything else that comes in. Audrey, thank you for mentioning that. Otherwise, I will move to another example. All right. So I'm just going to go to another example here. This is just a simple sales table, sales data that shows quantity versus total sales. So in this example, you can see we have a total sales amount. So a very common calculate function that you want to use calculate for is you may want to look at last year's data, or you may want to look at 2 years ago or last month's. And the way we do that is we use the calculate function. And this may seem like an easy function to put together, but if you just kind of think about it in this concept where you're applying your filtering first, that filtering is then going to affect the function that you're putting in. That's going to help you as far as when you think of that order of operations, as far as what that calculate function is doing and how you can actually then come into more advanced type of calculate problems. So in this instance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the common measure that's just going to show us total sales for last year. So I'm just going to go ahead and call that total sales last year. What I'm going to do in this instance is I'm going to say calculate. What I could do is I could actually just sum, I could just sum my sales price right here, but instead of doing my sales price, I'm just going to reference my total sales measure. So I'll call that total sales. And in this instance, I can use something called the same period last year. So that's one DAX equation I can use to apply a filter, but I'm just more accustomed to using the date add function. So as you can see here, I'm applying my first filter. I'm going to use date add. I'm going to reference my date column, my date dimension, which is right here. I'll show you the relationship that we created here in a moment. My interval is going to be -1 because I'm looking back 1 year. That's last year, so -1. If I was looking back 2 years, it'd be -2. But in this instance, I'm just looking back 1. And then my interval is going to be year. So if I was looking at last month, it would be, I would reference this month. But in this instance, like I said, we're going to look at the year, close my parentheses, and then apply. So as I had mentioned, if we go to our relationships, you can see that we have a relationship here made between our shipped date and our date column, because basically we're saying that until the item is actually shipped, we don't actually get to account for our sale. And that's how I can reference this date column, because of the relationship that's in the that is in the model itself. So now we have this total sales last year formula put into play. Go ahead and see what that value looks like. I simply replace it. We can see that last year we had more sales for 1997 as compared to 1998. I can also see what that looks like in a table format to verify what I'm looking at. Let's get rid of that. Let's look at year. Oops, not what I want. take a screenshot of these so we can validate. Clear our filter. We can see for 97, we have 648,000, which is what we had previously. So you can see here, this is 1998. So again, as we select this, we can see last year's sales. Any questions? And basically what's going on there, everybody, again, just to kind of understanding that calculate function. This is the filter. This filter is applied first. So it basically takes, it's basically looking at what is basically in the data set. It filters that data set down and then it applies the total sales. Or it runs the total sales calculation. Any questions on basically what we've gone through? Guys, I know there's, I'm not sure what type of questions there might be, but end of the day, there's not much more that we had to cover on the calculate function. I knew this was going to be about a quick 30-minute, this was going to be a quick, probably 30-minute presentation. Just wanted to explain the calculate function as it is it is your entry to more of the advanced type functions inside of Power BI. So it seems simple, but it also opens up a lot of doors to advance you in your DAX formulas.
We have a about how did you create the orange filters across the top?
Okay, sure thing. So these orange filters across the top, these are essentially, these are just slicers. So if you look at in Power BI, one of the normal visuals here is called a slicer. So you can see basically this is looking at order ID. So we can simply just drag order ID from one of the tables here, and that creates our visual. So essentially, I could create another slicer by just clicking on my slicer here. And then I can, for example, let's just bring in employee name. And now we have all of our employees' names where we can slice and dice the information accordingly. Then I can also change it to a drop down from a list. Then I can also add the search capability with it as well. Thanks for the question, Sherry. Any other questions from anybody on the call? So the question we have, so your calculations are just measures on the side to use in visuals. Correct. So, if we would go back to, instead of creating the visual, yes. So what you'd want to do in this instance, instead of pulling in, for example, let's say I wanted to create total sales, I could actually just pull in my sales price here. And this is going to create something called an implicit measure. And that's not really best practice, because implicit measures is basically what Power BI is doing. So if I hit the drop down, you can see it's doing a sum. I can change that to an average. Implicit measures are not best practice. So best practice is always to create a measure here on the right. So one, you can reference those measures in other calculations. Two, you're consistent across your reporting. So if I create a measure on, especially if others are creating reports off of that data set, you're all using that measure instead of having, Power BI calculated implicitly. So essentially creating that explicit measure keeps consistency, and it basically improves efficiency when writing your DAX equations. So anytime you're going to be making, you need a metric on this page, I would say 9 times out of 10, you should use a measure to represent that. So Helen, hopefully that answers your question. Any other questions? Well, we've got some more time here. even outside of the calculate question. Maybe you had some others. Happy to stay on the call and answer any questions you might have. Yep. Well, everyone, that does conclude. Well, here we go. When creating a function, how do you get to the next line? Okay, that's a great question. So calculating a function, what I can do here is I hold down Shift and hit Enter, and then tab over. So basically I could do that, you know, as many times as I want, but it's basically holding down Shift and hitting Enter is how you would do that. Then you can backspace and get to it. But if you hit Enter, it's going to execute your function. Great question, though. It's a good way to basically, if you have long, complex DAX equations, it's a good way to basically format so that you can clearly see what's going on. Any other questions? Is there a quick way to copy paste an existing calc to start a new one? The quickest way that I know of is just by highlighting it and Control-C and then right-clicking and then saying new measure and then pasting. That's the quickest way that I know how to do that. And then you would have to make this a new name, obviously. For previous year instead of last year. That's the quickest way that I know. What does the orange calculated column icon mean? The orange calculated column icon. Maria, can you explain a little bit further what does the orange calculated column icon mean? I'm not really sure where you're looking at on here.
Hi, so I've done my own calculations for business purposes, and my calculation goes orange, and I was wondering if you might know what an orange icon might be.
Your calculation goes orange.
So I've just screenshotted it on.
Okay. Oh, interesting. That I don't know. I have not experienced that. I don't know if that's maybe a version of, that's something new to desktop that I'm not aware of. I'm sorry, I have not seen that before. Is there an error with your calculation, or does it actually work fine?
It works fine. It's just those ones that are selected end up being orange. Since the update, I didn't know if that meant something else was going on, or
that I don't know. I haven't
okay.
checked. I haven't checked that update or seen what's going on with that yet. So I apologize. I'm not aware of that one, of what that
Okay,
could
thank
be.
you.
Yep, no worries. Thanks for asking. Sherry said, "What is the right way to keep these filters across all tabs?" So that answer could be answered in a couple different ways. There's no real right or wrong way. It's just depending upon what your requirements are. But at the end of the day, if you're basically having the same layout, which I would recommend for all pages of your report, you can sync these slicers. So if you're referencing these slicers, so you can sync those. And the way you do that is you actually go to the, where are we at here? You go to the sync slicers panel. And if I had another page here, it would allow me to sync those slicers across the pages, and I can just click those boxes. So if I just simply duplicate this page, then what I can do is select these slicers. Maybe It's not letting me. There we go. I can sync them across both. And that's going to keep consistency as I go to my next slicer page. So now you can say I have 1998 selected as I have it on my first page. The other way would be is if you have set filters that need to be applied to every page. So for example, if you need to always have this set on 1998, then you want to have the year filter on here. You would just do a filter on all pages, and then you would drag those. You know, for example, if I want to look at just employees, then I would look at, you know, I would drag that first name, maybe everyone, maybe it's just Andrew. I just want to look at Andrews. Then that would be applied to every page down here on the bottom. That keeps your calculate filtering correctly too. So, so there's a couple things to keep in mind. So if you, when you look at calculate, so right now, you know, calculate is going to work based upon the filtering that you have on here. If you want to ignore that filtering, now we're getting into a little bit more advanced side of things. But if you want to ignore that, you know, let's say we have this on here, you can now do another, you can add another filter to that, and that would be all. And basically this all function of, let's say we would reference the fact order details, it's going to now ignore, it's going to now ignore everything, all your filtering inside of, I can't talk, I'm sorry. It's going to ignore all the filtering you have. But if you want to maintain the existing filtering, yes, then you just write your DAX equations as normal. But if you want to ignore it, then you use the all equation, so that ignores your filters. So it's really just based upon your requirement. But yes, it would keep your calculate filtering, but it's also going to now apply this one as well. Great questions. Any other questions from anybody else on the call? What other classes do I teach? Well, we teach all kinds of classes. These are obviously the 1 hour classes on Thursday, but Collectiv, we teach Power BI Foundation courses, you know, for teams of up to 15 per class. So those are Power BI Foundations, and we teach, or Power BI Fundamentals, what some might understand those to be as well. So we teach those, and then all the way up to Power BI Advanced classes, to where you're looking at more advanced data modeling, advanced DAX, also visualization as well. Those are different types of trainings that Collectiv does offer. So if you have interest in that, you know, feel free to reach out to me, and we can talk further. Calculate percentages. Maria, can you give me some more, another example of what you mean by calculate percentages?
So instead of having the average, actually display it as a percentage and a number with the percentage sign.
Oh, so you want to see just the percentage sign?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Let me actually just do a quick calculation that would get us a decimal, and we can show you what that looks like. So let's just do year-over-year growth is equal to the divide function of total sales minus total sales last year divided by total sales last year. So then, if I bring that in here, our year-over-year growth, place that with this, would be 4%. If I want to look at that just as a percentage, I simply click on this, and then I go to my tab is this on here? This is the measure tools, and I change that to percentage, and then you can determine how many decimal places you need here. Awesome. Hope that helps, Maria. And then Helen and Sherry, Audrey has placed my email in the chat if you'd like to contact me regarding training. Any other questions? These have been great, guys. Happy to help with anything you have. Yeah, I know we got 20 minutes. Why don't we just go? I mean, if you have any questions on Power BI, I'm happy to help. I know we kind of got off path with the calculate question here, but you know, we've got a few more minutes, so I'm happy to stick on and answer any questions like this that y'all have questions on. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, everybody, 4th of July is coming up this weekend. So a couple things to keep in mind. Don't blow your fingers off and don't eat too much. So, I mean, as Jim Gaffigan always said, you know, it's, you know, I don't normally eat a hamburger, hot dog, brat, and a steak, but it is 4th of July. So hopefully everybody has a great weekend. Appreciate you attending. As Audrey had mentioned, we are changing up the platform, so keep an eye out for the new updates where we're going to be, where we're going to be hosting these events. So everybody have a great rest of your day and happy 4th. Thanks a lot for attending.
Thanks, everybody, and we will be sending out a recording of all of the Collectiv Academies, including today, as well as the slide deck. And yes, we will probably be switching from Teams, but don't worry, we will be sending all of that in emails as well.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.